All right. Good morning once again. In our last class, we started. I think what we did was to recap on add event listener, right? In that class, we were able to create a mini app that could display product details when the users click on it on the web page. And we have been on the JavaScript functions, under which we have covered, I think, just one major function, which is the add events listener. We want to look at different functions entirely, which are part of what every JavaScript programmer should know. So in this section, we'll be looking at JavaScript Dom. Can write. We're looking at JavaScript Dom. So let me create a different file just to explain that to us. JavaScript Dom. That is our focus. Yes, JavaScript Dom. JS Dom. .html. .html. JavaScript Dom.html. So let's start with what is JavaScript Dom. What is JS? Make sure you are making your notes. Dom. Now, let me give us a picture of what this aspect of JavaScript is all about. If you remember from CSS, when we're learning CSS selector, we talk about how you can reference HTML elements that you want to style, right? Said an element can be selected or referenced by its name, by its what? Tag name. We can also reference an element in HTML file with its ID and what? Class. So that same structure is what we are talking about, but this time around in what? JavaScript. Now, since JavaScript is a programming language that build interactivity or actions on HTML contents or elements, it means we must understand how it communicates those elements, how it selects what? Those elements before it can program those actions on them. That is what this topic is all about. So the DOM there means what? Document object manipulation. Document object what? Manipulation. How does JavaScript select elements that you have programmed or written in HTML? That is what we are talking about. So I am going to be walking us through different methods, different ways JavaScript can select what? Elements in what? HTML. Now, but before that, we need to understand where we are coming from. Remember, some time ago, I've explained to us that we have JavaScript output method, right? Can anybody remind us what we discussed under JavaScript's output method? Can anybody still remember? Because this somehow relates to one of those methods we have been using. So let me say directly that we have been using one of the DOM word concepts all this while. But there are some that we have not used, and there are a lot of logic that we have not implemented because I have not treated this as a topic. So I was actually coming here to borrow what? One of the output what? Method. My question is still, I'm still asking. I'm just still talking so that once you are ready, I pause. And what is the question? Who can remind us JavaScript output method? For God that has finished JavaScript, I believe should be of great help to us in this class. You have forgotten. Don't go. Can somebody help us? About get me. Document.getMe. Do we have any method like that? Document.getMe. It's not me that will get you, it's you that they will get. Okay, get element by what? By ID. So who can communicate or who can interpret that statement? Remember, I told us that one thing about programming is that you should see programming like the normal language you speak. This is how you can understand it. In my language now, if I tell somebody Nyase, it has a meaning, right? It means the person should come. That is the interpretation. So for every line of code you write, it's as if you are speaking the language like that. So you must be able to interpret what we are saying. So when you wrote document.getElement by ID, what is the communication? Can anybody interpret it? What were you saying? That is what I want to hear. Speak out. Say it might be the correct answer. Don't let the devil deceive you. That thing that you have in mind, it might be the correct answer. Is what? You are calling out the ID 30/70. Yes, you spoke part of it, but not really. You are calling out an element in HTML with a specific what? ID. Just like you are using an ID to call that element into what? JavaScript. That is what we are saying. Am I communicating? So which means that you cannot use that method until an element exists in HTML, not just existing, an element has what? An ID. That is the reason why I told us that we have alerts. That is the question I'm asking. We have been using them, we have alerts. But we have document.write. We have what? Console.log. And I explained to us that out of all these output methods, is only one that we will measure on, which is what? The one you just mentioned. But that was because of that time. Now that we are dealing with what? The main topic, where we ought to have explained that get element by ID. This is the topic that carries it. So it was under JavaScript Dom that you were now using what? That method. Because JavaScript Dom, now let's write the definition down so that we can understand what we are saying. Let's define what is Dom. The DOM in brackets, which is document object model or manipulation. Sometimes we can use the M for what? Model. We can also use for what? Manipulation. I said the DOM, which means document objects.
model or manipulation represents, are you with me? Represents your web page as a tree of objects. Represents your web page as a tree of objects. Represents your web page as a tree of what? Objects that JavaScript can access and manipulate. That JavaScript can access and what? Manipulate. So let's get something right. I just hope that I'll be able to explain it, get it from the next person. So all right, so now look up. I want us to stay on the board. I want to give us an illustration that will help us to understand what we are saying. The reason why I use the word tree, you know, tree has what? Branches. Now look at the screen. So let's say I am modeling my HTML elements now. I am modeling my HTML elements. Let me clean this. So this is the first box. And this first box is the body, for example, the body tag. Inside the body tag, you could have created maybe H2, image, whatever. So now we are saying that inside this, we have different words, elements inside it. This word can be your H1, the content this tag will have created. And then while you are sitting inside the body tag, we can also have another element which can also be maybe p tag, stay on the screen. Now, we can also, while we are sitting here, we can have another element. Let's say what? Button or what? Anchor tag, right? Now, the question is, we need to model the relationship between these elements. That is what DOM is all about. So that when you start sending actions from JavaScript to an element like this one now, you have to tell JavaScript the relationship between these and what? The container, you have it. Then you know that we can also have what? Another element, sub-element inside this one. Like if you are using a div, you can have a div as the main element inside body, and then have branches under what? That's in what? Div. So in JavaScript, you must establish these relationships. That is the essence of this topic, what? DOM. So if, for example, I want to select element that's inside what? H1. How do I what? Select it from JavaScript. Which of the method will I use? That is what this topic is all about. Now, let me establish a simple relationship before I leave this topic. This is the parents, right? Element. Why this is a child element, this is a child element, this is also what? A child what? Element. That is why in CSS, you know, in CSS, we use the same concept. When I don't want to class an element and I've classed the parent element, I will say div space h2, which means that what? I am using the parent to identify the what? The child. So if I'm not using that concept, I will have class what? The h1, so that I will call it direct. But I can have different h1 in this file. I have some in a group element like div, if I want to talk to the H1 in the group element, I can use the parent element to access it. So I just hope you understand what we are saying. So what I'm simply saying, because I know some of you must have forgotten, if I have a div here, and inside this div, I am using it as a container. I'm using this div as what? A container. So which means that I can class this container, class this container. All right? Then I'll come inside here and create what? H1 tag. I expect when I'm writing, your eye should be on the screen. Now, I'll say welcome to NIIT as server. Then I have another word, H1, but with different content. We are one of the leading tech firm in Asaba. Then I come outside this div. I have another H1 here. And this one is saying our students can explain better. Now, I'll say something here, pay attention. If I go to CSS, let me quickly do what? Internal CSS so that we can be seeing everything. Now look at it. Do you know that if I call dots, I believe somebody know why I started with what? Dots. Right? Somebody know why I started with what? Dots. Why? Because the element is a class element, right? Now, if I do something like this, dot this, just want to refresh our memory because this is exactly what we'll be doing now in JavaScript. But I'm doing this one in what? In CSS now. Now, if I come here and say H1, and I say what? Color. Color red. If I go to the front end, somebody will tell me before we go to the front end, let me test your knowledge. Which of the H1 will be color red? Will this one be included? Eh? That young man, answer me. Will this H1 be included? Yes. Eh? Just a minute. Hello? Yes? Okay. Alpha. Okay. Okay. Okay, there's market inside. What I ask you to do is to just observe, confirm, and leave, not to execute anything until I've spoken to her. What you went for is what we call investigation. You are not to execute any.
All right. So like I was saying, okay, I was asking the young man that will this H1 be affected with the color? Will not. Can you tell us the reason from our CSS selection? Because the H1 is not inside the elements. So which means this method, how can you describe this kind of selection in CSS? How can you describe this kind of selection? How can you describe it? This is, you access these elements with the parent. This is just like you go to my place, now my village. You feel that if you start calling Prosper, nobody will recognize me. But the moment you call my grandpa name, Eguero, they will know the Prosper talking about, right? That is what we did here now. So we use the family name or the parent name to access the child.
of which, if you don't know this logic, what you will have done is to come and class this what? Child. All of them, the H1, you go and class them. So as a programmer, you are trying to save yourself what? Stress. That since there are other H1 in this page, I can talk to some specific H1 that are in a parent's element, using the parent to reference them. So let's go to the front end and confirm this before what? We leave. So why I have to bring all this? I want to make the JavaScript work we want to do is, you see this kind of thing now, is what we want to now learn now. In JavaScript, how do I come from there, select that H1? How do I select the div? Because this one will be a CSS aspect. So you can see that what? Only the content of what? The H1 inside the element with the class name what? Container are affected. The other ones are not. So you need to understand this so that you make your work easier for yourself. So now let's go back to, so let's look at that definition again so that you understand what we are saying. How did I define JavaScript DOM now? I said what? Represents your web page as what? A tree. That is what? The whole of that web page. And you and I know that the web page, the content there, they are made up of what? HTML what? Tags, right? And these tags are like, they are structured in a tree form where you have a parent that is giving birth to what? Children. Where the main parent is the body. Inside the body, you begin to create what? Different elements. Inside some of the elements, you now give birth to what? Different what? Children. So that's how we say what? It's like a tree. So let's look at what? Let's go. Okay.
You use CSS to explain it to them now. Say you could show us on how to use the JavaScript Windows.
And I've said the class has closed today.
Yeah.
Did I say the class has closed?
So I'm just asking.
Wait, that's what we want to do that. That's what I said. Did I say the class has closed? All right. Now let's look at right notes. You can change text, images, and style dynamically with JavaScript DOM. You can change text, images, and style dynamically with JavaScript what? DOM. With JavaScript DOM. With JavaScript what? DOM. So let's start with the tags one after the other. Number one, selecting elements. Because I said JavaScript DOM is about what? Accessing elements, right? In your, right, from your JavaScript page, you are selecting what? Elements in your HTML document. So we are starting, look at this. I am categorizing them. I want to look at the method for selecting what? Elements. So I'm starting with what? Method for selecting elements. So you write, before changing anything on a web page, under the topic is what? Selecting elements. That is the first category we want to look at. And I'm saying you should write this. Before changing anything on a web page, comma, you must select or grab the element you want to work with. You must select or grab the element you want to work with. So that is what we are saying. You must what? select, or what? Grab the element you want to work with. Is that not what I just showed us with CSS now? Before we were able to change the color, we did what? We grabbed, we selected the element. So now, let's look at example A. Example A. Example A. Now, let me write my JavaScript what? Internal. And if we are writing JavaScript internal, what did I say you must do? JavaScript writing internal, what did I say you should do? You create what? Script tag inside what? The body, but before the what? The closing body. That is what? No HTML element. This is not allowed. Imagine you do like this. It is like an abomination. You shouldn't have any HTML content coming afterwards. This. And I think I have explained to all the reason. Can anybody remind us? Because I know this class people don't read. After what? After JavaScript execution, you are not expected to see any what? Action. Because when you run the code, when somebody calls this document in a browser, the code will run what? From the top. And running from the top, it means that what? Executes all the HTML element first, because I am to bring action on them. So let us see their normal behavior, their static behavior before my action plays out. I don't know if somebody get that explanation. Because we are saying that, please, let's get the communication right. We are saying that the role of JavaScript in front-end development is to build actions on. Can you build action on what has never existed? So the HTML needs to give out the content in its own neutral word state first, maybe not doing anything. Then after some second, that same content will start behaving what? Which means that what? HTML have executed itself first before JavaScript what? Action what? Plays out. That is the reason why the law says that those HTML should come first, so that JavaScript will ensure that HTML have done its own part, then before bringing its own. That's why we say that what this JavaScript should always be written before what? The closing body. That is, if you are using internal method. Remember, I have taught us what? External, where you have to link. Right? So the first task we want to perform now is what? Selecting elements. But we are looking at, let me use comment here. Yes, sir.
Using the internal and the external, which one is better?
Come in. I will answer you, sir. Selecting what? Element. That is what we are dealing with right now. Selecting elements. And the first example, A, we want to use what? Get element. By what? By ID. So we are starting with this one. So I don't think this one should be a problem because we are already used to it. But I just want to, because this is where we are supposed to learn it. So coming to your question, between internal and external, which one is better, right? External is better, sir. Even in CSS, we are told that external CSS is what? Is the best. Why? Because there is what we call debugging. In case you write your code and something is not working, when you want to know where the problem is coming from, when you write your, because here now I'm writing both JavaScript and HTML in the same file. So it will be difficult for me to isolate, to know where the error. So to have, in case of debugging, to make your work easier, that is why professionally we say that what? Separate them. If I'm debugging something on HTML, it's just for me to remove the connection and run it and see if the problem what get rid of. I know that what? Oh, the problem was from what? JavaScript. So I shift my focus from HTML and go and check what? JavaScript. So it makes your code neater.
But you must use the external.
You must link it. If I must not be in this room, you must connect to where I am, isn't it? But if I'm in this room, you don't need to connect to me. I'm here. That's exactly what we are saying. Right? So I'm just using this because I wanted to be seeing how I'll be communicating as a learner. But when you finish learning, You should write this code that I'm writing inside this script in what? Your external what? JavaScript. I hope we are still together. So now, let's write definition under this. Under this one. So the first example, we are starting with what? Get element by ID, right? Get element by ID is used to select element using the ID attribute. It's used to select elements using the ID attribute. Select the element using the ID what? Attribute. Using the ID what? Attribute. Now, which implies or which mandates you to create an element in the HTML section, which mandates you to create an element in HTML section. Are you there? Which mandates you to create an element in HTML section and assign what? An ID. And assign an ID. And what? Assign what? An ID. Please, you have to write fast too. Not good at waiting for student presentation. Where did I stop? And assign what? An ID. You can only consult people that are around you because I'm saving I have a lot of classes. I'm going to be repeating one thing 10 times. Or you leave space after the class, you go and fill it up so that we can move forward. Now, look up. I want to explain what I just told you now. This is like my external JavaScript, right? But right now, this is my JavaScript space. Now, because I want to use this method to select element, I must come back to the HTML section and create an element, let's say what? P tag, right? And assign what? An attribute called what? ID. So this ID is an attribute. So that is why we are saying that we are selecting element with what? An attribute. And why are we saying ID is an attribute? Because I have a sense, something is telling me that we may not know what is called attribute. But we must have learned it from what? The HTML and CSS class. An attribute is that property that is attached to what? Your tag that gives you additional what? Explanation. So this ID explains more about what? P tag. Is explaining the identity. So I will say, okay, maybe demo. So now that I have fulfilled the principle, then I will now go back to my HTML, my JavaScript session and write this JavaScript word code. So I will say let's, so this is JavaScript code. If I were to be you, the way you write this to help you, you write under the example now, you write HTML code. What I write under HTML, you write it there. You know write what? JavaScript word code. What I'm writing under JavaScript, you write it there so that you know that, okay, this code has HTML section and what? JavaScript word section. So let's what? For example, now, let's say what? Let's say what? Let's add just like a message. So once you see the let's, it means what? Who can tell us what the let's mean? The moment you see somebody, a programmer using JavaScript, starting with let, what does that tell you? Honestly, we are not learning. I'll say the truth. This class, we are not learning. I begin to ask myself whether we are actually, are we sure we are fit for programming? Because sometimes, with all this massive explanation, you come back here, you cannot answer simple questions. You will be good and go and study data publishing, Microsoft Word, Excel. Because you guys are not showing that commitment at all. You are not practicing at home. You are not researching. Just leave it, you go and sleep. That is what is happening. These are simple questions that they expect to take 1 minute for your answer. We talk about what variable declaration, what keywords, var, let, cost, isn't it? So the moment I say let, it means I'm declaring what? A variable. So let, so what's the name of the variable? What's the name of the variable? What is the name of the variable? Eh? What is the name of the variable? When I say let MSG, what is the name of the variable? The MSG is the name of the variable. Then equals to documents dot what? Dot get. So this is where we are using that what? Selection method. Get element by ID. Open a bracket. The ID is a string or number. A string. And what is the principle of capturing string? Must be in either double what, quote, or what, single. Now, what is the ID name of that element? Demo, right? Isn't it? So if I end this code here now, if I end this code here, who can tell us the expression? What is the communication? What is the communication? What are you saying with this line? Nobody can interpret it. Look at this. What you have said here is that you created a container because you want to go and call something from somewhere. And you have just said that what I want to go and call, store it in what? Here. So that going forward in JavaScript, that which is in HTML will now be in what? MSG. Now, get document.get element by ID is one of the JavaScript what? Dom method that or function that is used to select elements with what? And attributes. So what we have said here is that JavaScript travel to the HTML section, grab this element because that is the element with the ID what? Demo. Then bring it here, then store it in what? M what? SG. That is what we have said now. That's the communication. Go there, grab, because there was a note I gave to us that was before changing anything. Read that for me. Is your note? Before changing anything, what did I say you must do? Before changing anything, what did I say you must do? You must select or grab. You are in JavaScript, you want to program an action. You must select. And the ways of selecting is what we are learning at what? Dom now. Now, which means that right now in JavaScript, you have the whole of what? The whole of this present, right? So I can do away with HTML now because I have copied it inside what? This. Now, if I now want to, I told us something. So let me add content so that you will see what we are going to do now. Look up, pay attention. Now, let me add a message. Let's say what? Welcome. Welcome to NIIT. Asaba. If I go to the page now, look up. You see it here, right? Welcome to what? In fact, let me delete all this. So if I go to the front end now, I see what? Welcome to this, right? Good. Now, see what we are going to use JavaScript to achieve now. Just to confirm whether we have actually selected it, whether we can speak to it, or whether we are speaking to that element. So I will now come down here and say, I will now come down here and say NSG, which means that what? I'm selecting what? The P tag, which means that I'm talking to what? Welcome to NIT, because we have grabbed it before and it's stored in what? MSG. So I will now say what? Dot style. What I'm about to do now is what? I'm using Java, I'm using CSS in JavaScript now, because that style is what? The CSS. And I told us some time ago that if you are good at what I'm teaching right now, you can do away with CSS. You can write your CSS right in what? JavaScript. But you must capture that element and store it in a variable. Then you now call the variable and concatenate it what? With the CSS. Then you now say, what do I want to do? I want to change the size of that text. That is what I want to do. So I will call the properties that you know in CSS, which is what? Color, right? Is it not color? Then you will now put equals to, because you know that in CSS you put column, dot, like this column. You now call what? Red or blue, right? But because you are speaking it in JavaScript, you store it as a variable again, that we are storing color in a color variable, and then the color is a string. Then I will say what? Sorry, we say color, right? And the color is what? Red. So if I go back there now, what did you see? Where did can you see that truly JavaScript has grabbed what? The P tag with an ID word, demo, and now we are able to what? To manipulate it from JavaScript. Now look up, look up, look up. So if I want to increase the size, what will I do? I'll go down again. I'll say what? NSG, right? Dot what? Style, right? Dot what? Font size. Font size. You can see in CSS, it has hyphen, right? But here they are together, but the same name. So I will say, okay, the font size should be captured as a variable, and it should be a string. I will say what? 100. 100 what? PS. Then if I go back now, what do you see? You see the way you are manipulating this element from JavaScript now? That is the tool. Am I communicating? So I am going to go for 10 minutes break. You give me the same thing. Code this, apply everything from here to this place. Quickly, start. Those were just instant now. We're just trying to reference what we have done, just to bring it to where we are. So now you can see that we were able to what? To use the first method, which is get element by what? ID, right? So let's take the next one, number 2 example. Example 2. Example 2, or let's say B, is query. Query selector. Query selector. This we have to follow the case. Query selector. So this is another JavaScript. This is another JavaScript DOM element or DOM function. So let's look at the note. Let's look at the definition of what? Query selector. Query selector, right. Query selector selects the first element. Yeah. So I said what? Query selector selects the first element that matches a CSS selector. Select the first element that matches a CSS selector. Select the first element that matches a CSS selector. Like, in brackets, class, ID, or tag name. Like, class, ID, or what? Tag name. So from the example, you understand it better. So let's look at the example. Example here, let's say I have H2. Let's say I have H2. Because in my HTML section, I want to add another element. And this one is, what are we learning now? Query selector, right? JavaScript query selector. JavaScript what? Query selector. So I can class these elements because we said that what this one can work like the CSS method, because CSS can select element by class, select element by what? ID, and even with the what? The tag name. So this one is like the same copy with CSS version. So if I give this class, let's say then 01. So coming here, I want to select it in JavaScript. Let me create another script. Let me create another script. So I will say let's. What does that let mean again? Let me know whether we are here. If you forget this, I'll just start the kind of back. Hey, even this young man know that if this will fail. Now let's say let what? Title. Let title. Are you with me? Equals to. Can be any name. Let title is equals to document. This is the method now. Document dot what? Query what? Now look up here. You can see there is one that have all. There's one that have just what? Query selector. We are coming to that. The one I'm explaining is what? The one without what? All. Good. Now, if you want to select this element in CSS, how do you normally select class elements? Remember, I'll put this here, right? How do we normally select class elements? We start with what? Dots, right? Followed by the what? The name. So, because that was, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The way CSS, look at that definition. I said what? So can somebody read it? I'll say select the first element that matches a CSS what? Selector. Because in CSS, when element is class, we start with what? Dot. If it is ID, what will we start with? Hash. Then if it does not have class, neither what? Neither ID. What will I do? I will put what? H2. Chicken. That's why I say like, ID, hash, and the tag name. All right? So I'll end it here. I will end it here. Now, we want to also manipulate it. What is the syntax to manipulate it? What is the syntax? Because right now, at this level, you have traveled to HTML and grab one element, right? And that element is currently in what? In title, right? So if I want to change the color of this element, what will I do? I'll say what? Title dot what? The same structure now. Here I'll say what? MSG, right? I'll say what? Title dot what? Style. That style is to acknowledge CSS, right? That you want to use CSS what? Property. Then dot, what is property? So let's say I want to give it background color. Background color. How do I call background color here? I'll say what? Background. Remember, the C will be capital letter, but it will be together. No space like. Then I will say what? Equals to, right? Because I have to store it in a variable, just like that same way. Then I'll say what? Maybe blue. So if I go to the front end now, let's refresh. Where is it here? Query selector. We are supposed to get the element, sorry, The ID is what? Title, right? And we have content that we should have seen. Where is the content? Where is the item with the title? I did not create it. I did not create it. Are you serious? Okay, class, right? And I use dot title. No, I'm supposed to use what? Dot demo 01. No, I'm not going to put dot title. I was thinking I use title here as what? My class. No wonder JavaScript knows that this man, which element do you want me to call? I'm now wondering. Is that real? Yeah. Please call the guy upstairs to come and cover the gen, Bitfree. So I just have to what? Update here. And I will add what? Dot to it. Then if I go back to the header, you see it now? So can you see it now? So don't worry, I thought you are not. Thank you. So you can see that what? We have it. Now I want to change the text color to white. That young man will give me the code. Only him will give me all the whole code. I want to change the text because the background, I'm not seeing the text. So how do I change the background, the text color to white and increase it to like 40 also? Don't worry, he will give me the code how to increase it to this guy. You give me how to increase to what to 40. You give me how to change the text color. I want to change this text color from what? Black to what? White. I don't want to go to CSS. I'm doing everything in JavaScript. What do I do? Go down. I'll go down. Are we writing another line of code? We are writing another code, right? We are starting with what? Title, dot style. Only that guy should talk. Your turn is coming. Dot background. Dot what? No. The text color. Dot color equals to white. Have it? Let's use white. So if I go back here now, perfect. Now I want to increase the text to, yes, increase that to 40 so I can see it very well. I'm changing my mind. You. Tell me you want to claim it now. Okay. Title. So style. Dot font size. Good. Font size equals to 40 have it? 40 PS. Okay. I want to put padding. I want, because look at this. You can see that this DJ, the JavaScript is touching the boundary. I want space. Okay, padding. I want to use padding. I want to give padding to all the side at once. Padding of 20. How do I call it, sir? Title. Dot what? Style. Dot padding equals to what? 20. So let's go there. Perfect. So you can see that now the text now have space in between. Oh yeah, everybody, another 10 minutes. Because if I say to practice now, you not practice, so we'll be doing the work in class. Don't put that, if you don't learn with that habit where you put that semicolon, you will not think that everything is all right. That you will not be writing some code later that just because this icon is not there, the entire code will not work. So to be on the safer side, just follow it. I've also observed it, I understand, but I'm just trying to train myself in the right way. Thank God that putting it is not at putting error, because that is where it will have been a problem, right? Okay. Now let's look at the next one, which is remember that under category 1, under select element, right? These two methods that I've given us now, they are all under what? Selecting the element, right? What are they? Get element, query selector, right? Now let's look at the next number 2 now. Number 2, changing text, HTML and style. That is the next category we want to look at now. We want to look at some properties that can be used to change text, change HTML elements, and even style. Changing what? Okay, let me see if I can also put it here. That is no. The first one here, look at it here. Selecting element. Under selecting element, we discussed this, right? And what? That B. That was supposed to be B instead of 2. I don't know whether I use number 2. So I have to put what? Maybe example B here. Now, we are now looking at what? 2 now. Because there are different things we want to capture under this second category now. And I say here we are focusing on what? Changing what? Changing text. Let me put it as changing text, command, HTML, command, and style. Once selected. Once what? Selected. So the first thing we want to do here, the A here, that is like example 1. Example A here is change text. Change text. Change text. Now, let me quickly give us a close-up of what I want to talk about here. You know that before now, I said something, I was expecting somebody to prove me wrong. But thank God that you are not reading your notes. I think you are reading your notes, somebody will have proven me wrong. That's sir, but you thought all this that time. But thank God that you are not reading. It's not good tacking up for you. So now look up here. You know, I told us sometime that by JavaScript hierarchy, we are not going to put anything here, right? Because JavaScript will delete it. Now, why? Because if you look at where we are at, we did not use .inner. Did we use? That is the reason why I'm saying. Because if I had used .inner, it means I am telling JavaScript that I have my content in JavaScript. Why will the HTML also provide what? Content. So where you are supplying your content from HTML, sorry, from JavaScript, HTML content will be over what? Written. To delete it. Based on that principle that I show you. So now, what we want to deliberately is the kind of action we want to program. That when somebody gets to a page, he will see what? Maybe this. When he click on a button, that same element will show another content. So in other words, we are using JavaScript to what? To delete what HTML has and put its own. So let's see, that is one of the logic we want to use now. Now, note under this. Note, I want to explain this now. Note, use dots, because all this while you have been seeing this popping up. Use dot content. How many of us have seen this coming up when we are typing any of this? You have been seeing this part popping up in JavaScript. Good. Now you are going to see what it does. Use what? Dots text content to change only the text. Only the text. Let me break it so that we can understand it. Only the what? The text. Only the text. Are you with me? So now, let's look at let's us look at the application. Looking at whether I have to just write all of them at once. Okay, let's write all of them at once before we look at the application. So example what? B now. Under what? Changing text. The next one, right. change HTML. Change HTML. Under this, you write use dots inner HTML to insert HTML tag inside an element. Inside what? An element. Inside an element. So now let me take the example of the first one. So I want to take example here. Example here, where we call example here, let's say, let me use H3. So your HTML code is what? This. And then I'm using an ID, and the ID is demo2. And then I have this text that HTML is providing. We are on it again. This is what HTML has. So we will change this text in JavaScript to what? Welcome to IT Training Center. This is what HTML has. But the JavaScript will not remove this. That is idea. So I will now come to my scripts now. So let me create my scripts. And then inside it, I will say what? Let's, that is, I want to grab it first, right? Let's we equals to documents, because of the ID I used there, document dot what? Get what? Element by ID, right? And then what is the ID name? What is the ID name? What is the ID name I give to that? Demo what? 2, right? Demo 2. Then I will say, I think I will edit here. Are you following? Now, but remember I said we are changing the content, right? Since we are changing the content, I will say this, grab this. You know, if I stop here like this, it means that what? I'm saying that what? It should collect the whole of this line. But I want to grab and change what is inside. So I'll say grab it, then add. I'll say dot what? Text what? Content. That. Thank you. So we're adding the wrong place, right? This is where it should be, right? Dot what? Text what? Content. So I will now supply my content. My content is what? Equals to, if it's in a variable, I will just put the variable name after equals to. But since I don't have it in a variable, I will what? Call it. So what? Welcome. Or the content is what? Featuring Aguero Prosper. Now, I'll put it here. So if we now go back to the front end now, what did you see? What did you see here? Featuring what? As against what you initially gave to it as what? What did you put in that content, in that element? Is it not? Look at what you put there. Where is it? But JavaScript has what? Changed. And how was it able to change it? It uses a property called what? Text contents. That is why I said this category now is changing text, not selecting elements. Is that clear? So now let's apply that quickly. Let's apply that. Everybody, let's apply that. Remember that you come to your HTML section and create what? This first. Add content first.
You can write that without inserting that
Example B, NIT Asaba is located at DLEA. Now, let's go and communicate our JavaScript. So let me just copy the whole of this to save my time. Control C. And then you can see what happened now. The moment I paste this now using the same name, can you see the error generated? Two variables are using what? The same name. So I will just change this one to, let's say, pound. Now, look at what we want to do here. The element we created there is what? H4, right? And this method is talking about changing the HTML element. I think there's a way I define it. Let's go back to definition so that we can, I say what? Use what? Dot inner HTML to insert. That is from JavaScript. You are not creating HTML tag now. That is what we want to do now. So the code will become this. The code will become this. I'm just editing this one. So remember that I have to give it a different ID, right? Let's give this one different ID. Let's say this one is demo 4. So I have to change, since I copied it, I have to change it to what? Demo 4. Right? Now, I am not going to end it like this. I will concatenate what? That HTML folder. So now you now discover that each time you call inner HTML is a way of storing what? HTML elements in JavaScript. So you now do equals to, now the whole of the tag you want to create should be a string like this. What is the tag? Let's say I want to create B tag. How many of us know that we have a B tag? We have a B tag. So this is the syntax for tag now. Angle bracket, right? Then this is B. Then angle what? Bracket. That's the closing, sorry, the opening section of what? The tag, right? So what do I want this tag that I'm adding? What will it display? Let this tag display, we want to bold, because that is the work of that word, tag. If you put any tag, let's say you put H5 inside that B tag, it will bold it. So let's say what? We want to what? To bold our content. We want to bold our content. Now, we will now bring in the closing section of the tag, which is what? Slash, right? Then B, then you close the angle bracket. So which means that in the place of H5, you are now replacing it with what? This new tag that you are sending from JavaScript. So if I go back there now, you will see that what? What is it showing? Is outputting what we added to the new tag, not what, at least what, automatically, this B tag has replaced what? The H4 tag. So this is how you can change HTML. Initially, we have H5. We have H5 with what? An ID demo 4. Sorry, H4 with an ID what? Demo 4. And then trying to output the content, we now supply what? A different. That is what? This particular property is what we are emphasizing on. This is what actually did the job, this particular one here. So how did he manipulated it? This one was is used to store HTML, right? So that is what? Directly, you are storing what? This in what? This. And this is attached to what? to the H4 that you have what? Invoked. Are you seeing the logic now? So from here, this section, first of all, collected what? The H4, and then concatenated with what? The inner HTML, and then replace it with what? The new tag. So let's also apply it. I think that is where we are going to stop. That is where we are going to stop. But let me quickly take, okay, I'll take one more. Let's fast about this one so that I can quickly bring in the second one. Handling events is the third one, and we want to add action to a button. And when the user click on the button, an action will be triggered. So now, let's take brief note under it. Notes, explanation. Events are actions. Events in JavaScript are actions that happen in the browser. They are actions that happen in the browser, such as clicks, key press. Remember, we practiced all this one the other time. And form what? Submission. When somebody submits a form, what you normally get? You get a feedback that say what? Form submitted what? Successful, right? These are events, because if somebody did not click on that button, you will not get that action. So let's look at the example quickly. Example here. In my HTML section, I will create a button. Example, in my HTML section, I will create a button. We have a tag called what? Button. Such as click, key press, and form submission. Now, I will create HTML element, and then we are using an attribute called what? OnClick. So the example A here, good. After taking that note, you write example A. Example A is what? Using OnClick. That is the one I want to use now. Using OnClick. So I will add OnClick. So OnClick is what now? OnClick is what? OnClick, is it an event or ID? Or an attribute rather? It's an event. In HTML, is it an event? In HTML, it's called what? In HTML, this OnClick is called what? In HTML, ID is called what? Attributes, right? In HTML, this OnClick is what? An attribute. Good. Now, this attribute now is going to hold a function in JavaScript. So the value of it will be the function you intend to create, the function you are going to create in JavaScript. So inside it, I will now write what? Change color. So this is going to be the name of the function in JavaScript. Because it's a function, I'll put what? The brackets. So which means that, please pay attention here. Pay good attention here. What we are saying here is that this button is not going to be an ordinary button. It's a button that will react based on the function created in what? JavaScript. So you will just add the name of the function inside the OnClick. Then you now go to your JavaScript and create that function. So let's go to JavaScript now. The first thing I'm going to do in JavaScript is to create function. Please, I have taught us how to create function in JavaScript. If you don't know it, I will just close now. Then you go and research it. How do we declare function in JavaScript? What is the function syntax? What is the function syntax? What is the function syntax? This young man, I'll let him his notes. The notes will be fun. Huh? I don't think you can see it now. What is the function syntax now? You declare the function keyword, right? Followed by what? The name. Followed by the what? The code block. And then whatever you want the function to do will now be written in the what? The code or the coiling what? Bracket or braces, right? Now look up. Now, before that, the app we want to develop, when the user gets to the page, they will meet a particular test with a status. Then when they now click on the button, that test status will change. For example, when they visit the web page, they will meet a text that says, welcome to NIT with black color, probably with a size. That once they click on the button, that black will now change to red and the size will change to 100. For example, that is the app we want to develop now. Are you getting the communication now? So which means that we must create an element that will display the default appearance before the click we bring. So for that reason, we'll now go back to the HTML section and create under it. I can just create what? P tag. And then that P tag, I'll give it an ID because we will grab it. An ID, I can just give it an ID, let's say what? Tests. All right? So that particular test that we want to influence its action with the JavaScript what? Button, let that test be what? Hello. Let it be hello, everyone. Welcome to web development. Training. This is the test. So now I will now go to my JavaScript now. The first thing I'm going to do is to create that function. And what is the function syntax? I will start with what? Function what? Keyword. Right? Followed by the function name. Please listen. The function name must be exactly what you use the onClick attribute. Where is it here? The function name must be exactly this. So I'll come here to avoid typographical error. I will copy it because it must look the same. So after my function declaration, I will paste it. All right? Then we must open the curly bracket and write whatever we want the function to do inside, isn't it? Hello. Now, inside the function, we will now grab the P tag using one of the JavaScript what? Selection concepts. Using what? Document dot what? Remember that P tag that you ID tests, right? Hello, look up. I want you to get the connection. Look up. Let's go back there. Let's come back here. This P tag here, what is the ID? Test, right? Now, remember that the button tag, when the user click on this button, the action will come on what? This test, right? Which means that what? This button clicking will trigger what? An appearance of this. So which means that you have to grab this in the function. And grabbing this, which method are we going to use to grab it? Because it has ID. You can now use what? Get element, sorry, document dot what? Get element by ID. Now, if I have used a class with a name, I can now use what? Query selector. Are you getting the logic now? But because I'm using ID, I will choose to use what? Document dot what? Get element. I hope you are getting the communication. Now let's go now. So I will say what? Dot get element by ID. What is the ID of that element? Is what? Tests. So with this, I have grabbed what? The whole of that what? P tag content. Are you following? Now, remember that we want to effect changes on it. Because if we go to the front end now, let's go to the front end. What do you get now? It's showing what? Hello, everyone. Welcome to web development world training. With which color? Black, right? But once they click on the button, it will change to what? Red. The size will increase. That is the app I'm developing now. Right? Now, let's go and communicate that. So I'm going back to my JavaScript section now. Now, I will now concatenate dot what? Style. Remember, because this is how you say that, oh, it's CSS you want to communicate. Then style, then dot what? The color you want to change first, right? Just like what we did before now, right? Dot what? Color. What is the color name? Remember the syntax. Color name is what? Let's say what? Red. Right? Then I will end it here. So I want to grab it again. Sorry. I want to grab it again inside because I want two things to be done there. One is to, when they click, one is to change the color. When they click again, when they click that same time, one is to change the size. You see the way I'm duplicating it now. And that will bring in what? Font what? Font size first. Font size, take it to what? 50 PS. So I want another thing again. When they click, change the color to red, change the size to what? 50 PS, then change it to what? Slant it. That's what? Italic, right? Good. Then I will now change this property to what? Font what? Style. Font style. Do I have font style here? Font what? Style. Then I will say what? Italic. Italic. So if I want to add more appearance, that is how what? I will come to what to add it. Now let's go to the front end now. Where is the button? The button, we did not give it a name. Let me check if I have a debugger here. Somebody should debug why we are not seeing the button. Let me go to the HTML section. Why are we not seeing the button that we want to click on? Because you did not put anything here, right? So I'll say, well, click me to see the appearance. That is what I will put there. So that when the user gets it, oh, click me. So I'll say what? Click me to see my color. Or let's say what? To see my appearance. So let's go back to the front end now and check. So we have a button here, right? So if I click, what do you see now? You see, as I tap on that button, the appearance change. Do you understand it now? So it's an app. So it is not less for you, that website you are building for a client. You now bring in this creativity. Just create something on the page that you instruct them to click to get other words, information. So just apply it. So this is where I rest my case on JavaScript words. What is the topic of the day? What is the topic of the day? JavaScript what?